What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Brock Talk Show. I'm your host, Mason the Brock Henderson. Today, we're going to talk about the summer because it was a pretty good summer. We had some good movies come out, had some good video games come out, had some good trailers drop for the upcoming TV shows and movies and stuff like that. So yeah, it was overall a good summer. But the one thing that really stood out to me throughout the entire summer was one game that I've been waiting for years and years and years and years and years, several years, and that is Zero Escape, Zero Time Dilemma. Now, a lot of you may not have heard of this game, and that's kind of the point. If you have heard of it, that's great. I love the fact that enough news got spread about the game that we were able to get the third game, because for a while it was in development hell because it wasn't marketed well, it didn't do too well in sales, so it got stuck there for a very long time, and only through the support of a few people who really loved the game did it even get released. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about games that are, in my opinion, underrated. Now, a couple things before I start this list. One, this is my opinion. So if there are games on here that you think, oh, that's not an underrated game, or why is he not even on there? Why is this game not on? It's all my opinion, okay? So just keep that in mind, bear that in mind, and go to the comments and tell me your list. A second thing to talk about, when I say underrated, I don't necessarily mean a game that is rated low that I think should be rated higher. There are a couple like that, but I could also mean a game that I think isn't as popular as it should be or didn't get the attention I think it deserved. So that could also be another definition of underrated. And third, this is going to be kind of a mixed bag. I've got two games that are just games, and then the other three are actually game series. So I didn't know how else to do this because they don't fit together well. Anyway, so we're going to start off our list, bottom of it, number 5, with the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney series. And that's not just the Phoenix Wright games, the whole Ace Attorney series. I just think it's popular. It's fairly popular. If you talk to most people are going to know what the Ace Attorney series is. However, the reason it's on this list is because I think it deserves to be more popular than it is. It's got several games under its belt, and it's a really good series. It's really good. Each game, it has good cases, it has good logic that you have to follow. A lot of it is not just straightforward, oh, here's the answer. You actually have to think about it. Like, a witness will get up on the stand and say something, and you have to find that one little piece of evidence that's like, hang on, that doesn't fit. And then you have to find that other piece of evidence that just works. Some of it can get a bit confusing, but I just think they weave together the story and the narrative so well. And on top of that, give you a fun game to work with. You have to actually think about what you're doing. You can't just fly through and say, oh, let's try this piece of evidence, and let's try this piece of evidence. It's not that easy. However, on the flip side of it, and the reason it's so low on this list is because, yeah, a lot of people have recognized that it is a good game. And you hear more and more people talking about it because they played it and they know what it is and they think it's a good game too. I personally think it should be more popular. I think it should be rated higher than it is because it's a great series. It really is. And if you haven't played any of the Ace Attorney series, I suggest playing it right now. Most of them are on the DS. Some are on the two of them are on the 3DS. But anyway, on to number 4. We've got a game that, yeah, it's Star Wars: The Force Unleashed 2. Wait! Don't click off the video. Don't go to the comments and give me hate comments. Just let me explain, please. So, I realize that this is not a good game. Okay, I understand that. I understand that there are a lot of problems. The story is so confusing. You can't clone a Jedi, but you can, but you can't, but you can't. Can you or can't you? Even at the end, you don't really know. I understand that the game is way too short. The first game was awesome. It was epic. It was nice and long. You had to visit each world twice. This one, you're just like, oh, this world, done. It was way too short. And third, obviously, they were trying to make a third game. They were like, okay, let's just tell a story in between that's going to get us to the third game. So yes, this is not a good game. I understand that. However, people don't really talk about what's good about this game because there is some good stuff in it. First of all, The graphics are incredible. I mean, just comparing it from the first game. The first game looks really cartoony. It was made quite a while ago, and actually pretty good graphics for the time. But you really look at it, and there are a lot of times too where it feels like you're dying for some unknown reason, or it's glitching, and there, little enemies flying everywhere. It doesn't really hold up as well now. The second one still does. Not as many glitches. The graphics are really well done. It looks really, really just clean and well animated, I guess, is the best thing I can think of. So it's really well done game graphically. A lot of the stuff that they added is actually pretty good. First of all, you got 2 lightsabers now. That's always fun. 2 is better than 1 as far as lightsabers go. I don't understand why nobody really thought to say, hey, let's do that again. The fact that you can mind control the stormtroopers, that's pretty fun too. You're just sitting there, there's a stormtrooper, okay, these guys are your enemies. He starts shooting on his own players. He's sitting up there in the top of a tall building. You don't want to live anymore. I don't want to live anymore. Jumps out a window and kills himself. That's pretty fun to think about and to play. The only problem is, that's it. And it's in this game that isn't all that good as far as story goes and isn't long enough. So I think that this game isn't necessarily a good game, but it's underrated in the fact that there's some good stuff in it that if we'd gotten a better game would have been more amplified and people would have talked about it a bit more. So I think that aspect of the game, the gameplay, the graphics, the new stuff that they added as far as the gameplay, I think that stuff is good and really underrated when you compare it to the story is crap, and that's what really everybody focuses on. And I hate it because I would have loved to get a third game with this, if only they had not screwed this second game up so royally. So, I don't know. Maybe somebody's going to see that and say, you know what, they had a good idea going. Let's make a better game with this. Maybe, hopefully, because that would be awesome. The Force Unleashed is a great game. I want to see more of it. So, on to the third game. We've got another game series that may get me a lot of hate, but maybe not as much as Force Unleashed 2. And that is Final Fantasy XIII Trilogy. Now, I'm not going to say that Final Fantasy XIII is the best of the Final Fantasy games, or game series even, but it's not as bad as everybody says. And a lot of people may hate me for this. I don't really care. But you really look at, first of all, the first game, it was a different style. The characters were a lot of fun. A lot of people hate on the characters for some reason. I mean, Vanille can get pretty annoying at times. I understand that. But the rest of them are pretty good. You've got Snow's a fun character. Hope's, he's kind of the kid of the group. The one that's trying to work over his fear. Lightning, in my opinion, is just 100% awesome. She's. How many times do you get a female character that is the monotone badass? You always see that character portrayed as a male because most of the time you just got a male who talks like this and just puts on the sunglasses and that's it. He wins. You always see that as a guy. This is the first time that I can think of that I've seen it as a female. That's pretty awesome. And she's awesome. You watch her fight, it's incredible. And then the other two, they were kind of there. I don't really remember them as well, but they were still interesting characters. So I don't understand why people hate on the characters as much as they do. They are pretty fun to see. The style of the game is a bit different than other Final Fantasy games. It's still turn-based, but a bit different because your turns actually load up and you can use them in a bit more of a free-flowing combat type style. And it's just very interesting the way the game is set up. The story itself, too, is very emotional, and the first one especially, there's a lot of emotion in it. It's going to save her sister, they're trying to save the world while still, dealing with the fact that there's this regime that people are living in and they feel comfortable and safe, and it's really not what they think it is. It's all them being controlled by a lessee, and a lot of stuff going on. They have to deal with all of this. And so that's fun to watch. It's fun to watch them have to deal with it. It's fun to watch and see what they're going to do. At the end, their choice, whether they destroy this paradise that people are living in, or if they just let it go. It's where the second game comes in that I understand people's frustration, but it's still not as bad as people say. The time travel aspect, yeah, it's not handled well. In fact, there are a lot of games that have time travel that don't really handle it well. So I understand that. Sarah herself, Lightning's little sister, isn't an interesting enough character to hold a game by herself, and I can't remember the other guy's name right now, but Noel? No. He is fairly interesting, but not interesting enough to hold a game alongside her either. So yeah, I kind of understand people's frustration with the second game. In my opinion, it's the worst of the three. But then you've got Lightning Returns. This one, I think, doesn't get as much praise as it deserves because it took the fighting style from the first two games, this sort of time-based, turn-based / free-flowing action. They took that and turned it into something very interesting where your attacks actually use up your time bar as it's slowly refilling. I think that's a great idea. And the way it was handled was very well done. It was very unique to that game. It was still based on the other two games, still based on their fighting style, but still unique in and of itself because it was just so, holy crap, how am I going to learn how to do it? And once you learned how to do it, it's like, okay, now I got to do this. And it was just really fun to play around with and work with. It was really well done, really well handled. So I don't understand why people don't talk about it. I don't understand why people don't really focus on that because it was really fun to play around with and sort of figure out as you're going. And then the story itself was actually pretty good up until the end. You're having to play through this game on a time limit because you're trying to save the world before it ends in 13 days. That's fun. I want to see more of that. The time limit itself sort of gives an edge that you have to think about what you're going to do next. Am I going to go do this one that may take a little bit of time, or am I going to go do this one who may take a lot of time? The day's about to end. Do I start this mission and possibly not finish it, or do I just let the day end and probably come back tomorrow? What's going to happen? Am I going to have time to finish this stuff? There's a lot that goes on because of that time-based thing. The ending, yes, was a little bit strange. Spoilers if you haven't played it yet. The fact that you have to face sort of the creator of this whole world and stuff, and then you destroy the creator, and then for some reason everything just goes back to normal and that's it. That seems a little bit strange to me that it all works out like that. But anyway, like I said, I understand there's a problem there, and I understand that gave people issues, but I just think that this game is so well done in its setup. And on top of that, there is a lot of good emotion in this one as well. So overall, the Final Fantasy XIII series, not the best Final Fantasy series by far, but still, it was good. It was enjoyable. It was fun. There's a lot of good stuff about it. I don't understand the hate that it gets from everybody. It really deserves to be higher rated. Instead of a 5, it deserves probably a 7. Something like that. On to the second in the list. This one comes from my favorite game series of all time, Kingdom Hearts. There's one game that I do not understand why people hate it as much as they do. And that is 358.5 days, or 358 over 2 days, whatever you want to call it. I prefer 358.5 days. It was for the DS, and it was a game that told the story of Roxas and the organization. I understand some of the complaints. People were complaining about the fighting style, how it's very hard to deal with, and then they complained about the bosses and the missions and stuff, how a lot of them felt really difficult to deal with, or a lot of the bosses felt similar or really easy to figure out. There are some issues with the gameplay, but I counter with the fact that it's a DS game. When can you think about a DS game that could handle a game like Kingdom Hearts? Really handle it. Not many. And, the fact that they have decent graphics for the DS, they had to incorporate actual PS2 graphics as well, in the cutscenes at times. It's a difficult game to make it as big as they did for the DS. the gameplay was not as bad as everybody's saying. You really think about what they had to deal with, what they had to handle, it's not that bad. And on top of that, the story they wrote just sort of makes up for all the problems that I have with the gameplay. I mean, it's such a beautifully written story. I don't understand people's problem. You watch the HD cutscenes in Kingdom Hearts 1.5 that they released for the PS3. They did sort of a movie for 358 and a half days. If you watch that without having to play the game, you cannot tell me that you did not enjoy that game. But because everybody's having issues with the gameplay, it makes it one of the worst games in the series. No. That was reserved for another game called Recoded, which is pretty much another Chain of Memories game. This was a well done game. It was a good story. The characters are great as always. The gameplay was hindered by the fact that they had to do it in a DS game, and a big DS game at that. I don't understand the hate that it gets. I think it's not one of the best games in the series, but I don't think it's down there with Recoded. I think Recoded is kind of on its own down here. A lot of issues. The story is not as good as any of the other games. And then 358 Days is probably up here. And then Kingdom Hearts 2 is like up here. So, not as good as the best games, but not nearly as bad as Recoded. So, my opinion. On to the first of the list. And I already said it, the Zero Escape Trilogy. A lot of people don't know what this is, and I'm not going to say too much about it because I don't want to give anything away. Because if you haven't played the game, you really, really, really need to. Because it's so... When you're playing the first game, you kind of got an idea of what it is. First game is called 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors, 999. It's for the DS, and you just start playing it, and you think you got an idea of what the game is about, what's going on. You're one of 9 people trapped on a ship, and trying to get out of the ship, trying to escape it. And by the end of it, it's completely just blown your mind, and how crazy it is. Second game, you go in with your mind already blown by the first game. You kind of expect some of the twists, but still, they manage to blow your mind, despite all of that. And then the third game is sort of an explanation of the second game and what happened in between the first and the second game. And it still managed to blow my mind even then. And I was expecting to have my mind blown. And it still did it. It still managed to... I'm just like, holy crap. It's really, really well done series. And the thing is, it's not necessarily a game for those who want to play these epic games, because it is a visual novel. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there. If you're not into visual novels, you may not enjoy it as other games, as much as you do other games, but it's still a good story. And I think if it's kind of like reading a book, except in between some of the chapters you have to escape a room first. But it's still a very good game series. So the first one, 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors on the DS. Second game, Virtue's Last Reward on the 3DS or the PS Vita. And then the third game just got released, and that is Zero Escape, Zero Time Dilemma on the 3DS and the PS Vita. And one of the great things about this game, it wasn't well marketed, and that was a lot of its problem. That's why it didn't get the popularity that it really, really deserves. But one of the great things about it is after the second game didn't do too well in Japan and didn't do too well in the US, something happened on Facebook. The fans got up and said, we want the third game. The producer of the game said, we're not going to have enough money to make the third game. So they got on there and started something called Operation Bluebird. Now, I was a part of that. Like, I was a member of it, but I didn't really actively do anything, unfortunately. But it was just really awesome to see fans of this game stand up and say, we want to have the third game. We need to create support for this. And you know what? They did. They managed to do it. And that should tell you just how awesome this game is. The fact that the fans demanded a third game should really tell you just how great and how awesome this series was. So I highly recommend this. If you haven't played it, go play it now. Have your mind blown. It's epic. It's awesome. It's so much fun to play through. And honestly, the replay value is pretty great too, because you go back after figuring a lot of stuff out by the end of the game. You go back and play through it again, and you start to realize certain things as you're replaying it. You start to go through and be like, oh, I understand that now because I understand this. It's a really great game. I don't want to spoil too much else about it because then your mind isn't going to be blown by as much. So go out and play it, enjoy it, and let me know at the bottom of this list, what games do you think are underrated? What games do you think deserve more attention or deserve a higher rating? Let me know. We can discuss it because there are a lot of games out there that, you know what, yeah, it's not a great game, but I still enjoyed it. It's still fun to play through. There were good things about the game. There was good stuff to do. A lot of people are too critical. That's one of the biggest problems that I think I have nowadays, is that there are a lot of people that are just too critical at times. And I'm actually kind of being a hypocrite in saying this because I critique a lot of stuff. But there are good things about games. There are good ideas. And hopefully somebody can take an idea from that game. Hopefully somebody can take the ideas from Force Unleashed 2 and turn it into a better game in another Star Wars game. Maybe they decide to make Force Unleashed 3. They take a lot of what was from that game, a lot of the good stuff, and turn it into a great game in Force Unleashed 3. With a better story, a longer playtime, stuff like that. So really fight for those games that you think deserve better attention, deserve higher rating, because it could happen. You look at Operation Bluebird, what it did for Zero Escape's trilogy. That stuff can happen. If enough people stand up and say, you know what, this is a good game, or this game has good stuff in it, let's focus on that. Let's focus on the good stuff and try to make games based off of that good stuff. So, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. That's the end of this Brock Talk Show. If you watched, thank you for your views. I really do appreciate it. I understand I'm trying to do a Brock Talk Show every month. Unfortunately, June was very busy for me, so I didn't get a chance to do it. So this is going to be for the whole summer. And I'll likely talk about something movie related in August with Suicide Squad coming out. So yeah, let me know what you want to hear me talk about. Other top fives, other things to discuss in the next Brock Talk Show. Let me know your top 5 list of the most underrated games. And can't wait to see you guys at the next Brock Talk Show, so I will see you there. Peace out.